Hello, I'm virtually in Santa Barbara, California, enjoying the sunlight and the breeze of the sunny Saturday morning, welcoming my vacation. But I have a podcast script for you, which I'm gonna read. This is Understanding Deuteronomy 18:9 to 13. Which is a special call to spiritual integrity. We often sometimes are misled by our traditions and customs. But here's the truth. A passage often read as a strict list of don'ts. But when we look more closely, we discover something deeper and far more meaningful. This passage is not about fear or restriction. It is about spiritual integrity, trust, and identity. Let's begin. Segment 1. Context matters. Entering a new land. Deuteronomy 18 takes place at the critical moment. Israel is standing on the threshold of the promised land. This land is not empty. It is filled with cultures, religious practices, and spiritual practices that are deeply ingrained. God says to His people, when you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. This instruction is not about isolation or cultural superiority. It is about spiritual protection. God knows something fundamental. What you practice will shape you, who you will become. Israel's future would be determined not only by where they lived, but by who they trusted. Segment 2. Why these practices were forbidden. The passage lists practices such as child sacrifice, divination, sorcery, witchcraft, casting spells, consulting mediums, and speaking with the dead. At first glance, this feels like a random list, but there is a unifying thread. All of these practices seek power, knowledge, or security apart from God. They do three dangerous things. They replace trust in God with fear of unseen forces. They attempt to control the future rather than submit to God's will. They reduce human life, even children, into tools to appease false gods. Biblically speaking, these actions distort truth and morality. They lead people away from compassion, justice, and reverence for life. God's concern is not curiosity, it is corruption. Segment 3. Detestable is not arbitrary. The word detestable may sound harsh, but it is not arbitrary or emotional. It describes moral decay. History confirms this truth. Society built on fear-based spirituality often justified violence, exploitation, abuse, all in the name of religion. God rejects these practices because He desires to preserve the dignity of human life, clear moral responsibility, a direct, honest relationship between God and His people. This is not about control. It is about care. Segment 4. God's justice and the nations. The text explains that these nations were driven out because of such practices. This is important to understand correctly. This is not ethnic judgment, it is ethical judgment. Throughout Scripture, God holds nations accountable for injustice, cruelty, and corruption, regardless of who they are, and Israel is not exempt. The same standard applies to God's people if they abandon Him. Privilege never replaces responsibility. Segment 5. Be blameless before the Lord your God. This is the heart of the message. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. Blameless does not mean sinless perfection. It means wholehearted devotion, undivided loyalty, living with integrity before God. Instead of chasing hidden knowledge or supernatural shortcuts, God calls His people to walk openly, humbly, and faithfully with Him. Faith is not manipulation. It is trust. Segment 6. Timeless relevance today. Most of us today are not tempted by ancient rituals, but the principle still applies. Anything that replaces God in God with superstition, seeks control rather than surrender, values power over truth, falls into the same spiritual danger warned about in Deuteronomy 18. The forms may change, the temptation does not. Deuteronomy 18, 9-13. It's not primarily about what not to do. It is about who to trust. God invites His people then and now into a relationship built on faith, obedience, and moral clarity, not fear, manipulation, or hidden knowledge. The message is simple and it is profound. Live differently, trust fully, walk blamelessly with God. Thank you for listening. Until next time, walk in truth and integrity. See you.